Tonight on America, the Conversation, Andrew and Tim discuss trusting corporate media and navigating what media sources to trust. All this and more tonight on America, the podcast presents America, the Conversation. Hello and welcome to America. Oh, that's too loud. Hello and welcome to America. That's still too loud. Jesus fucking Christ.
This should just be the intro. I don't know why.
Hello and welcome to America. Oh, it's still too loud. Jesus fuck. What's wrong with my... I need to turn this down. Okay, there we go. Hello and welcome to America, the Conversation. I am one of your hosts, Tim Philippi, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Andrew Turner. What's up, bud?
I am also a host that goes...
He is also a host that goes. Well, today the conversation is going to be talking about the news and which ones we find bullshit, which ones we like, and what you should listen to, because we're telling you to listen to this. This is an authoritarian show where you have to come away with this following our exact direction.
You have to do exactly what we say now that you've listened to us.
That's we're influencers. We're influencing you. It's the law. It's the law of the internet.
Thanks, Biden.
Not really just for legal sake, but who cares about laws? Not the news. It seems sometimes, because you can just straight up fucking lie on anything sometimes. Like,
I mean, the people making the news seem to not care about laws very much.
Not a single shit. Like, you brought up a concept to me that I've over the past few weeks have been taking to heart, is just the fact that it's corporate news, the corporate news structure versus the journalistic news structure of old, I guess. But like, and it just has been sinking in. I'm like, yeah, fuck. I guess every single one of these people, and I've always kind of known it, but like, are owned by a billionaire. I mean, you know, News Corp owns Fox and like a whole, the Daily Mail and all that bullshit. Like,
well, and even, I mean, I would say even less conspiratorial. Not that that's untrue.
It's not a conspiracy. It's just the fact they do just simply, it's a corporate news thing to sell ads. They sensationalize things. I mean, it's clear as day, the talking heads. I mean, yeah.
I think that, so there are two levels to that. One, yes, there's like a top down big thing of like, in the end, you know, whether it's MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, they all are benevolent or beholden, to their advertisers, right? Like in the end, if they say or do something that will get their advertisers to pull out, then they won't say or do that thing, because they have to make a profit at the end of the year, because they have to make sure that their shareholders, their board, their hosts all make a paycheck, right? So that's something. It is still a capitalist structure in a lot of our top-down mainstream media. Another thing is just that all these people know each other and are in a social bubble together, right? Like
they attend the correspondence dinner together and laugh at each other. They get roasted. Just
and that's one in public, fucking, right? That's like a celebrated event of like our journalists and our government like commingling, like more so like. You know, Tucker Carlson and Rachel Maddow both went to Ivy League schools. You know, they're all East Coast and West Coast like people that hang out at the same parties, that hang out with each other, that are liberals in the classic definition of the sense, in that they're...
Carlson was on MSNBC when he started.
I mean, and I don't mean liberal like left, as you can, like I am a leftist, not a liberal, but a liberal in the classical sense of the word. Like, they believe that the American empire is to be maintained, and that like America is destined in some sense to be the greatest thing in the world. And I don't. I think that we are another country in history that thinks it's the greatest thing in the world, and every empire before us has fallen, and one day we will fall too. And with that in mind, you know, there is a graceful fall. I think it's already happening, the fall, where we pull back
slowly but surely,
and we stop being an imperial state, and we start taking care of our own people, and we stop trying to police the world. And like, if we do police the world, it's through the UN as just an equal member voting with all the other countries. But our media, as well as the media across the world, the Western world especially, it's a little bit different in other parts of the world, but is owned by the corporate structure, right? Is owned by the people in power. And it is beholden to the advertising dollars that are also people in power. And then the people who work in it all hang out with each other, have similar philosophies, whether they lean conservative or lean liberal or lean, you know, right down the center. I remember a time when I used to think that it would be good that our news was centrist, that
Mhm.
it didn't have an opinion and it just gave us the facts. And what I
Yeah.
realize is that facts are
Walter
biased.
Cronkite.
Facts are biased, right? Like,
Mhm.
because people politicize everything, including truthful statements. When you say truthful statements, you inherently become leaning to one side of the aisle.
Mhm.
Like, if you say that people are as wealthy now, the top 1% is as wealthy now as it was during the Gilded Age, before the Great Depression, before people started, anarchist bombing rich places,
Mhm.
before the rise of fascism across the Western world, then people will take you as, a far leftist communist. Well, those are
Mhm.
things that agree with communism, that agree with social democratic ideals. The idea that wealth inequality is a huge problem that leads to fascism indirectly and conservatism and culture wars directly. But
Mhm.
that's not something you're going to hear or talk about on any mainstream media television program because, I mean, like, they're not going to upset their donors, their advertisers, their wealthy owners by saying, "Hey, we should tax you at 70% like we did under Eisenhower."
Mhm.
I
Yeah, they only seem to react to like advertiser shit when like someone has gone like overboard or like I don't even think I've seen I mean I'm probably wrong here but like an advertiser pull from Fox News ever despite all their lies, racism and everything until someone Bill O'Reilly assaulted that woman or found out whatever the hell it was and then Laura Ingraham said I don't know, something about against Black Lives Matter where it was like, I mean, everybody pulled from them and they kept hyping on about, well, this is against the freedom of speech or whatever it is. I'm like, no, it's capitalism. That's how that works.
yeah.
You guys want to live under this. Well, guess the fuck what? There's two sides of that fucking capitalist coin you got.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just,
It goes back to why I say the parties are the same party. They're just
mm-hmm,
leaning different directions, right? I forget who said the quote, but the United States is a one party state, but like everything else the United States does, it had to go over the top. So it has two of them.
mm-hmm,
It has two one
yeah,
party state parties. So I mean, you're never going to hear the Democrats and you're never going to hear the mainstream media talk about how we should call Israel an apartheid state, that we
yeah,
should stop funding
yeah,
them. You're never going to hear them talk about how we should pull back on the empire and remove at least half of the hundreds of American bases that we have spread throughout the world and military
mm-hmm,
installations. You're never going to hear them talk about CIA black ops for a long term, or Lockheed Martin, making money off of every war that's existing, or the war that we perpetuate in Syria and the Sudan and all over the world, that we fund weapons and money and political ideologies to, or coups in Venezuela. There's a lot of things that the mainstream media is not going to talk about because the mainstream media is a conservative capitalist institution. It
yeah.
relies on money to exist.
Yeah, and I don't think I'm ever gonna see it go away versus like, or us in
Kind
general, but
of.
like it made to a point and like there's
Yeah.
two reasons why I'm wondering like it's like the way I've had it described to me in the past, it's like a drug dealer selling you bad drugs, or at least back in the day, because now all drugs are laced with fentanyl or something. But like it serves them not to sell you
I
bad
hope
shit
not.
because all you're just going to do is either report them, yeah, right. Um,
Kids,
but
don't do
if
drugs. Wait till you're in
don't do drugs
college.
at all. But like, okay. Let's move away from the drugs. It's like wine. If somebody's
Sure.
gonna sell, like you can't sell me a bottle of grape juice and call it like a fine Pinot Grigio because and me drink and go, oh no, it's not good. That's grape juice. Like it doesn't serve you to do that. So why would you keep handing me falsehoods? Like there are
Because
non-biased or not, I wouldn't say non-biased,
if
but
a vast
one sec.
majority, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, just like The Economist, great periodical, and it covers the economy in a non-biased way. Like it's a capitalist magazine, but it talks about the economy in a straightforward, decent way.
Mhm.
Like it wouldn't serve them to say it's lying or the stock market's gonna have a gigantic explosion and you should watch out when it's not going to. You know what I mean? Like versus CNN just having a sensationalist thing, like what's his name? Not Jim Adler. That's the lawyer.
The Texas Hammer. Yeah.
Who?
The Texas Hammer. Yeah.
Yeah, the Texas Hammer, like Anderson Cooper. That's not who I was thinking of. Like someone like Anderson Cooper, or specifically Tucker Carlson, who had to legally admit into court that his show isn't news, it's entertainment. So like,
well, I
don't know where my rant just went here. It's more just like, does it serve to actually put all this dumb shit out versus actually doing the news? Like, what percentage of CNN or Fox is actually the news? Like, it's not all Brett Baer on Fox. Like, he's the only newsman I can actually think of on there that's actually is
he still on? I don't think he is on
straight-laced
Fox
guy.
anymore.
But Brett Baer's not on Fox. Well, then they
so.
lost the only decent human being they had there.
But that being said, I mean, like you kind of brought up 3 points there, and I'll address them in order. So, like the grape wine analogy. People will keep buying it if everybody and all their friends and their family say, "Isn't this great Pinot Grigio?" And they go, "It is great Pinot Grigio," and they chug it. Like I don't know what you're talking about. Like
by Welch's.
We both saw kids when we were in 8th grade like smoke oregano and then be like, "I'm so high." Like your metaphor breaks apart when you realize human nature of like. I think a lot of people, like a significant percentage,
is it a news placebo effect?
Oh yeah, my God, I mean, people believe whatever the big TV says. I mean, on their side especially.
The talking head. Literally.
To the Vanderbilt Carlson, excuse me, Vanderbilt, the Cooper Carlson comparison. Both of them come from extremely wealthy dynasties. Yeah. I mean, more so Cooper with the Vanderbilt, but I mean, Tucker comes from Schwann Enterprises. So, I mean, like you can see right there, like they had their parents hung out with the same people in the same getaways. They went to the same summer camps. They went to the same schools. Like, even though they, according to the average normie who just barely watches politics or keeps up, is going to be like, oh, they're totally different people. And it's like, well, I'm sure they are. Like, one's probably polite to you at a party and the other one's, not. But they're both like completely out of touch with reality and what it's like to do your laundry and like choose if you're going to pay your electric bill versus eat today. Yeah. Like so there's that. And then the third point is that how much of this percentage of this is real news? I don't know. I mean, like it probably depends on the reporter, the report, the channel. Like mainstream media is good at getting what the average probably American thinks. Like whether that's left or right leaning, but it's not good at getting you the full and complete truth. Like
then go. Sorry.
No. That's pretty much my point.
Then what is like? I mean, I would venture to say NPR is. I mean, it's left leaning because they say climate change is a thing. So I guess that's the litmus test or whatever. Now, like it's there's I personally like Reuters, whatever you want to call them. I don't find them too one way or the other. I know my wife likes the Atlantic and New York Times, which are definitely, I mean, New York Times is what it is. I just like playing the mini crossword and the Wordle. But that's about it.
I would argue that the New York Times is probably the most incompetent left-leaning paper in history. Like the number of times they've been like, this Hitler guy isn't a big deal. Crypto's the next thing. Yeah, like the number of New York Times articles, there's a Twitter account called New York Times Pitchbot that just makes up fake pitches for headlines to the New York Times. And they all are right leaning and it's great. But I mean, like, I will tell you this, Tim, like the idea of not being openly biased and being down the middle of the road, I don't think equates with truth. Right. I don't think that just because Reuters or the Economist is a great example, the NPR is a great example. I think that NPR is never going to talk about like big leftist concepts in a way that's not like, isn't this kind of crazy and quirky? Like that's how they phrase giving everyone a house in the United States when we could definitely do that. Like,
some
or at least
just like want to
exactly.
have college for free. Isn't that nice?
Some people want to actually treat drug addicts. Like, so there's, because once again, all those people went to the same liberal arts colleges. They went through the same programs. Like they have the same mentality. The idea of like conservatives being like colleges are this leftist bastion is so funny to me. When every college professor I've ever had is a typical liberal who like puts up a sign in their front yard that's like, at this house, science is real and Black Lives Matter. And like they're the most
have one of those
CNN
signs.
eating, like middle of the road people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And like you can find communist and leftist and socialist professors,
Sure.
but they're rare. Just like openly fascist professors are probably
Yeah.
rarer because you get fired. But which I mean, you should.
Yeah,
a fascist should not be allowed in
absolutely,
learning
no.
institutions. But that being said, I think that like. And Marx speaks to this. I mean, a lot of socialist and leftist writers speak to this. Like, there's classes, right? And everyone in the mainstream media is going to be from the upper class,
Right.
just like Congress, like for the vast
Yeah.
majority of it, just like all these institutions that we've lost faith in over the last 30 to 50 years. Like that's
Yeah.
because they're run by the elites, and the elites have been promising this American dream that has been slowly being ripped away from us every year, more and more so. And was never there for most like women Americans, for Black Americans, people of color, like indigenous Americans. Like they never had that security. But I mean, like even white men are noticing now that like it's being ripped away. Now they're trying to use a culture war to say, well, it's gay people that are ripping it away. It's immigrants. It's, you know, it's all these things. When the truth is, it's the rich. Like the wealthy have gotten even wealthier. The top 1% of the 1% made something like $1.4 trillion during the pandemic, while we lost like 33% of our wealth as millennials. Like it is ridiculous how much money has exchanged hands to go to the top since Reagan. And the truth is we're going to have to take some of that money away and redistribute it in order to solve these major, huge problems and decrease our defense budget heavily. And I don't think you're going to hear that on NPR or from Reuters. Like there's just not any mainstream media, big corporate structure that is going to tackle an idea like that when a lot of their funding comes from rich and the corporations.
Right. Do you think, and I'm guilty of this by doing America the Podcast, who presents this show, political comedy. It's now at its surface, satire is great. The world needs satire. But at the same time, it is still put out by CBS, NBC, Shway Media, because we're on the same level as them. If you didn't know that, audience, don't check into it. But
I would argue that we're bigger, but
that we're better,
better and bigger,
bigger, absolutely. But it's a way of entertaining, but also calling, out truth to power in a lot of ways, maybe not as left leaning as, any, at least you and I would like. Hell, America the Podcast, I don't even go that left leaning. I try to stay middle of the road just to piss off enough people. I feel like I should go more left leaning personally. But that's a creative thing for me to figure out and you to figure out. But like, you have, for instance, Stephen Colbert and Seth Meyers, who are pretty left-leaning liberal people.
Yeah.
Not straight up communist.
Yeah.
I would say that Seth Meyers is a little bit more on the line of that, with calling out the rich, despite being very rich himself. Like it's, but also,
Seth Meyers is partially responsible for Donald Trump. He was the host.
He admits to that himself. It's a terrible thing. I would venture to say Obama is more responsible for that, because Obama's the one that went up
always
and
blaming the black
man.
Racist Tim. Racist
Tim. No, but dude, I would say Seth's jokes to Trump that day were hard. Obama's were harder, and Obama's funny as fuck. Like I'll give him that when it comes to the jokes I've heard him say while roasting people like that.
Man, he's the best speaker I've ever seen that can get nothing done. You're absolutely right about that.
A goddamn man. But he's funny as shit though, which that's more with John Lovett's jokes from whatever that show is called, Love It or Leave It. But I don't know, like if it hurts in the long run, because I remember watching a thing with Colbert talking about how people thought the Colbert Report, back when he did, the Republican dumbass character, some people, the left laughed at him because he was calling out them, but the right laughed at him because they thought he was real. And which was a scary part for me when I came up with the Bastard, who is a real person, and that's the last time I'll say that. Theb starred, like
when the Bastard came to you, when Thebadias came to you,
when Theb came to me, he also was a crazy person, but also didn't want to be fascist. at all, like whatsoever, because he's not. And neither was the Colbert Report or anything like that. Jon Stewart's a very left-leaning guy. My rant ending here is, does this hurt the news in any way? And obviously people shouldn't be getting their news from that and should seek it out, but like, does it help or does it hinder? Like, because there's Hassan, who also is very funny, unintentionally, I think funny. But he's
well,
fucking
sometimes
hilarious.
50-50.
50-50.
Chapo's really funny too. That podcast.
Yeah, Chapo's funny.
I mean, like, and so is Some More News in a lot of ways. Like, he definitely
Some More News is.
Cody and Katie definitely integrate like a lot of comedy. I mean, a lot of the things that we're going to list today on the things we like are funny and truthful.
Some More News is the most left-leaning thing I've ever watched. As far as
Chapo's
the comedy
probably
goes,
farther
like,
left, but yeah.
For sure. But like, still, Some More News, hilarious.
But also purity tests what matters. They're not fucking capitalist centrist bastards.
Sure.
Like all the people we just mentioned. Like they actually want a better world and want systematic changes to our world.
Yeah,
which I think is
wearing
the
it on their sleeve, which seems like what most of those comedians do, like Colbert, Fallon.
Well, I think once again they're part of a bubble, right? Like they live in New York and hang out with their, like they can't help it. That's kind of my point. Is like a lot of these middle of the road, mainstream, even liberal leaning comedians or hosts, like or talking heads, like they don't know any better. Like they're not down in the street fucking living in the dirt. Like they have a totally different view on America and its life and what life is, right? But I will say, do I think comedy helps? Yes. I mean, comedy is definitely a positive over a negative. George Carlin is another great example of somebody who was super funny and bringing huge ideas that still, I'm amazed that conservatives think he's on his side when he talks about what he says. You know? Oh yeah, it's the same thing that like you were talking about with Colbert. Like,
have they heard him say things?
I think it was Paul Ryan who like had Rage Against the Machine until he got sued as his like opening. Like conservatives love adopting leftist and liberal
We literally
culture.
hate you. That was the response from Rage Against the Machine.
You're the machine we're raging against, I think is what Tom said online. Like
Morello is. God bless that man.
I think comedy is important. I think that comedy should always be punching up and challenging power. I do think the majority of American political comedy today. I think that a majority of political comedy in America today, reflects the mainstream, even if it leans liberal. I think that it's a time of its culture. And that's why you're going to get from smaller independent journalists, from smaller independent comedians, you're going to get more truthful comedy. I mean, because the fact is they are not beholden to anyone. They don't, Hassan doesn't have to worry about what his boss says because he doesn't have a boss other than his viewers, right? Like Cody and Katie don't have to worry about what the idea of Patreon and us all smaller, that idea of like crowdfunding has changed the news in a way that is huge because now, people like you and me, hopefully one day can get to a point that we're making legitimate incomes that are livable from people contributing. Which, by the way, check out the Patreon whenever you get a chance.
Yeah, got extended episodes up, including of this episode.
Eventually, we're going to
be
get
in the
you
main
video.
episode, so we can tell you. Oh yeah, yes, absolutely.
It'll be after my move, but that's something we can talk about the viewers another time. I do think that comedy is super important. Yes, because comedy is a lens to get normal people that don't give a shit about this shit. That you know to listen and hear and think of new ideas. I would blame Jon Stewart and Colbert for my drive to the left because I used to be a Republican a long time ago, back up until 2008. We're both white men. We both used to be Republicans.
Yeah, but like if it hadn't been for that and hearing Jon Stewart go on and on and on, and then seeing Colbert play a character and go, oh, that's what those dumbasses are. That's what all I grew up with. Like, oh, that's what. Oh, I'm no longer a right-wing person now. I don't ever think I actually was. I just think I was told that I was by a church.
I don't think most people are authoritarian, like theocratic fascists. Like I think that most people are brainwashed. Like
100%.
I think most of the Nazis weren't sadists. They were just brainwashed into fascism. Like
most of the people now are any of the Proud Boys, all of them. Like
some of them aren't sadists. Some of them like hurting people. Like,
there absolutely is people, but that's also in a way not even a way. It's a mental health disorder. Like it's just a bunch of mentally sick, brainwashed people that believe that Jews are controlling things with lasers. I don't know.
Lasers.
Space lasers.
You got to have Goldman on for a margin Marjorie Taylor
Which,
Greene episode.
I will say
he knows how to get her good.
A good Jewish friend of ours who, I mean, arguably and for sure hates Marjorie Taylor Greene more than anybody.
Yeah, I would put that he's a funny motherfucker before he's Jewish. Yes, for the
funny motherfucker.
But yeah, both help. I don't know, man. I think comedy's great. But I
one
think
thing about the comedy though, which I've noticed, and there was some things that I'm like, oh, is this getting caught in a the weird bubble, the phone tree thing? She never said Jewish space laser.
Oh,
she
really?
said the Rothschilds have, as far as I remember, she said the Rothschilds control a laser, something like that. But it was making a reference to the their conspiracy, a source for a bunch of different conspiracies. They're also Jewish. I think they technically controlled the World Bank at one point, like they owned that specific thing. I don't know what it was, but that's where their dumbass conspiracy comes from. The same thing happened with Trump at some point where he said, I don't remember what it was, but they said that he said something when he didn't actually say that. It was a an embellishment of what he actually said. And it was just like things like that get caught. And again, Jewish space laser, not a thing as far as I can remember that she actually said. And if I'm wrong, tell us in a review of this show, but I don't think I am.
And I will say
that's what
the Rothschild conspiracy is directly tried to like old fascist like ideology against anti-Semitism. Like it is straight up.
It's dumb.
A code word, a dog whistle for Jew. Like if
absolutely.
Just like globalist.
Rothschild just means Jew. Globalist means Jew. Soros means, is George Soros? No, he's like Greek though.
No, George Soros still means
is
Jew, Jewish. Yeah.
Is he? Oh, okay. God. But yeah, that's what I like. I don't want to ever happen like with my stuff, which it doesn't. Like we're very well researched at America the Podcast and here for the most part, despite the fact that I can't remember if Marjorie Taylor Greene actually said that. But
he's Hungarian.
Yeah, things
by the way,
can get Hungarian. Thank you, not
because
Hungarian.
What's his name? The last dictator of Europe like uses him as a big straw man.
Oh yeah. They talked about him, that fascist that Tucker Carlson likes.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about too.
Oh, okay. And see, that's what
man, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, European listeners, that I don't know the last like openly fascist dictator in your
I think that's the new one from Italy, though. That lady's pretty damn fascist. She's like Mussolini.
Yeah, but she's not a dictator.
Niece. Yeah, not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
But
not yet. Lukashenko. Lukashenko is the dictator.
Lukashenko, yeah. Which, brings me to like, I guess the final point I want to talk about here, and Tucker going over there promoting Lukashenko, who's, a fascist piece of shit, like, openly so, and, Trump touting all the, Trump doesn't matter here, but still Tucker touting strongmen like Putin, touting people like Putin and touting people like Kim Jong-un. He's a dangerous person on a news network, and I don't know why we can't get rid of him, why it's still okay, other than the fact that he's legally entertainment. But what I'm getting at here is that I don't know, I should have done my research before this, but there is some country in Africa where the news fucked up the country so bad that it turned super authoritarian, and that they fixed it over time. They're no longer under an authoritarian regime. It's democracy again, but they make people who want to be journalists get a license to do so, where you have to be accredited, and you can only report on the news if you have a journalistic license, because it's like, in their viewpoint, of the person I heard talking about this, was you wouldn't let anybody just be a doctor. Something can go wrong in a surgery and you can completely kill a person, basically, if you do it wrong. And the same thing can happen if you are reporting the news incorrectly, if you are reporting falsehoods. And I always thought about that. I'm like, well, that means the state controls the media at that point, which isn't great. So, but at the same time, like, fuck, they've got a point. Like, I mean, think about like just simply what social media and the news did with the Arab Spring. Like, that had like 5 different government changes, for good, better or worse in some cases.
Can I give you a scenario?
Yeah, sure.
Donald Trump, when he came into office, he was like, we're going to sue him for libel. We're going to change the definition for libel for media. If the government was able to renew regular licensing for journalists, do you think Donald Trump wouldn't have immediately cut out all the license for every liberal and centrist? I mean,
That's
like,
my point.
no,
That's why I'm like,
think,
I don't think it can work.
I think
here.
I think media is your right. You have a right to be a journalist if you want. You have a First Amendment right to the freedom of the press.
But to report falsehoods, though, that's what I'm like. How do you get? It's like false advertising almost. Like you get sued for it. Fuck, you can movies, theater, or studios can now get sued for false advertising in trailers. Like, so
I mean, if you want to get into
something
like
that's not true,
lawsuit reform, I mean, that's a huge different like podcast that I wouldn't be qualified for, that I'd want to get a lawyer on the cast with this.
Neither
like,
am I.
I think that, and a good lawyer, like an actual good person who is also good at their job, which is rare in that field. But I think that, to be honest, Tim, like the demonization, like I would rather have the shitty media landscape we have now than I would have the government in charge of it, because we're leaning and trending so hard to fascism that I don't think it won't be abused. Now, here's the deal. I think that the way you're going to democratize the media, you're already seeing it. Like the internet was a huge help to that. Patreon, individual crowd donor, like that kind of thing. I hate saying Patreon. They have their own issues, but it's become synonymous with crowdfunding. Crowdfunding, independent media. I mean, that's how you're going to change. And I think that media landscape is already changing. Right. The problem that you have, which is that a bunch of falsehoods are told to our grandparents and our parents and they believe them. I don't know
local news, which is owned by like one company, the Sinclairs, like for the majority
of it. I don't
know
a single person in our age group that regularly tunes into CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News or the local news. Like everybody gets their news from the internet and from their community bubbles on the internet. Like I don't know a single person who does that. It is a generational gap in information right now, because and Tucker Carlson, for like all your, we can't get rid of him, he's the most watched newsman in America.
I know it's when that's why like he's an entertainer, which is why we can't get rid of him. No, it's not. No, I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's but that's why he's not going to go away.
If you license, like tried to set up a system like that, you would have a revolt from the right. You would have another January 6th, but on wherever the media licensing building was. Right. Like I don't think that like. Now, I think that probably the way to do that is to democratize media more, support independent journalists. And also, I mean, somebody should come along and try to fix the laws for libel and like straight up lying. Like I guess like Alex Jones is a prime example of this, like where the system rarely works.
Lied so much, and he has like 4 million listeners a day.
It took 2 decades.
Or week or whatever.
It took 2 decades.
2 decades?
And almost 20 kids being killed and their parents being harassed. And so, I mean,
my God.
I think that we're not going to be able to police the media ever in an effective way.
No.
The way that we can do that is start winning the hearts and minds of people through funny, good, truthful media at a smaller level and sharing it, which is, I think we're going to wrap up on like some suggestions of what people to listen, right? So what we're doing all the good things, audience, and everyone else is doing the bad things. Yes. So listen to us and share us, because I tell you, we're the only ones who can fix it. It's
don't do it in a Trump voice, because then you negate everything you just said. Like, I mean, which circles back to the people that I do like getting my news from is a lot of funnier people, because I think that it softens it, because we're in such a dystopia that you need to be able to laugh at it, which is the whole reason I do America the podcast, because we live in a fucking dystopia. Like,
it's Blade Runner or Cyberpunk without all the cool neon. Like,
I know, God,
that is what we kill for.
I haven't watched Blade Runner in so long, and I wish I could live it, but I don't want to, because it sounds awful.
Like tears.
I just
in a rain.
The music's cool. That's it. And trench coats.
It's the Fallout world without the bombs falling. That's what we live in. It's this corporate like it's amazing that everybody's like, oh, how crazy Cyberpunk and Blade Runner is and Fallout and all these movies, all these dystopia. And it's like,
oh, that's going to be
just go look at any American like main street now and how dystopic it looks, with like 30 Exxon signs and like an old worn out Chuck E. Cheese banner. And then like
came from New York,
a homeless camp down the street. Like that's what I mean. It's like, it's so corporate and fake. And then like the sheer capitalistic, like lack of empathy is shown on our streets every day, more and more. Like, and how many people are going to Care Now clinics because they don't have insurance? How many people do we see that are houseless or in between houses on the street or living in their car? Which, by the way, most houseless people have families, have jobs, live in their
Yeah.
cars, like live on a friend's couch. Like homelessness
Mhm.
is and houselessness is what we should say, is a blight upon this country that is
Yeah.
unseen, even to the fact that we're seeing it more and more often on the streets these days. And that's
Yeah.
because we don't take care of people. And that's
Yeah.
because of capitalism, which, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it might be that putting profit first as a species is not the best way to organize your species.
No, it's not. All right, so let's end on what we actually consume. I think we've already said it so far. You can go first.
So I got YouTube, podcasts, and then books.
Yeah.
So YouTube, definitely check out some more news, and then their podcast, even more news. It's hosted by Cody Johnson and Katie Stoll. Very funny. It is in depth. You're gonna get an hour and a half to 2 hour long like essay video type video on a subject that is pertinent to the left. But they are openly leftist, and just a great news source. I would say that they're less offensive than a couple of my other suggestions. The Surfs is a great YouTube channel. Check that out. Stark 300. Shark 300 is a great channel. And then, I'm not gonna lie, I love my himbo. I watch him every day. Hassan Abi. Check him out on Twitch. Top
Himbo.
political streamer. He is.
He is.
He's my sweet, small-headed, big-boyed commie boy who thinks America deserved what it got for 9/11. But
that's a friend of ours said that too. I won't say their name, but
to be
his
fair,
mom, he's a communist, and his mom walked in. His mom was like, "Did you see what happened?" And he walked in. He goes, "We fucking deserve it." I'm like, oh no.
Which Hassan clarified after apologizing, which this is true, and he's right about. Which is the American people, the people of those buildings didn't deserve it. The American government did things policy-wise that directly led to that, like giving Osama bin Laden a bunch of guns and money and power.
Good Jesus Christ! Yeah. Didn't Al Qaeda come to the White House back in the 80s or something like that?
The Taliban,
whatever.
Did. The
Taliban did. Yeah, Taliban did.
But Osama bin Laden was a CIA contact that was accepting money regularly.
God.
That movie Charlie Wilson's War, which made it seem like a good thing that we got involved. It was just bad that we didn't stay and build an empire there at state. Was kind of the message of the movie.
But Tom Hanks was in it.
But Tom Hanks is in it, so it is a good movie. It very much shows the kind of the side of that, what happened when we gave arms to the Mujahideen and the Taliban to fight the Soviets and make it a long, drawn-out war. Because it would be stupid as an empire to get into a long 20-year war in the Middle East.
Oh, yeah, don't want to do that.
What a fucking dumb idea that would be. And so, we built that, and I don't know. I don't want to defend Hassan all day. He's a great guy, and he gets too much shit. But yeah, check out Hassan on Twitch, and then my podcast, Behind the Bastards / It Could Happen Here. It's by Robert Evans. He's raised by conservatives, lived in Waco, Texas, and now a leftist who lives in the woods. No wonder I like him. But Behind the Bastards is a more historical podcast. It's going to talk about a lot of things that set up kind of the current situation we're in and the horrible people that did it. And then It Could Happen Here is more about a future, like what we're seeing the country fall into, what a civil war, what fascism rising, what you not having a power grid, what you having to work with your local community to grow food would look like, all that kind of stuff. If you're worried about the future, it is a preparation guide to that from a leftist angle. Trap House is great. If you really want something funny, it is what's considered the dirtbag left. They don't care about being offensive. They tackle liberals, conservatives, definitely fascists. They're big on, taking down power structures, and they're some of the funniest motherfuckers on the internet, to be honest. And then the Fear and podcast, hosted by Hassan and one of his friends, Will Nerf. It's kind of a daily news or weekly news kind of podcast that you can kind of get into, and they have great interviews. Books, to kind of wrap it off for me. Peter Kropotkin, I'm always going to suggest this to anybody who ever wants to get into leftism. The Conquest of Bread. He was born a Russian prince with his father owning about 1,200 serfs, and he came to hate the inequality in society, seeing it directly, and renounced his royal title. He was in prison for decades under multiple governments and was spent decades in exile as well. But he points out the flaws inherent in capitalism and kind of why capitalism is incompatible with human nature in the first place. How we create poverty and how scarcity is just an imagined thing that we make up to keep people rich. Alex S. Vitale's The End of Policing is my second book. He's a professor of sociology and a coordinator of the Policing and Social Justice Project at Brooklyn College. And he really talks about, the expansion of police authority over the last 40 to 50 years, especially in the last 30, and how community empowerment, social justice, and public safety really depend on us, pulling back from this idea of militarized police that are patrolling areas and getting involved in business and being, occupying force in our own American cities. And then finally, Robert Evans, my boy again, he wrote a book called After the Revolution, and it takes place in a distant future in the United States after we've balkanized and become multiple countries. The Republic of Texas has become its own thing. A nuclear warhead went off because of
Jericho,
a right-wing terrorist group that released it in Dallas, around Dallas-Fort Worth. So it's a really, for us,
cool.
Me and Tim and a lot of our personal friends, it's close to home. But it is a interesting look on what the fall of the United States could be and what it looks like. But that's what I got for everybody and what they should read, watch, listen to. Get doom pilled, black pilled, commie pilled on.
Doom pilled, yeah. I because of what I do for a living, my books are usually industry books except for podcasting engineering. So a lot of what I read there isn't in the political spectrum, but I will highly recommend How to Be an Anti-Racist, Ibram X. Kendi. Great book. And then two older books, I'm blanking on specifically the book that Marx wrote. What is it called? The
Capital?
The Communist Manifesto.
Oh, that too.
Just read
yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah.
You're muted. But I would also recommend...
That's Capital. Communist Manifesto. And Engels helped. Engels paid for all of it. Engels paid for all of it.
Also, oh God, the Thomas Paine book, Common Sense, is a great, fantastic. If you really want to understand where the American Revolution came from and why, and just the fact that empires are dumb, Thomas Paine's got you covered. I would say the first half of it, the rest is all about land stuff and farming in America back then. But the first 40 pages are really will get you going.
Your reference to Paine brought me back. Also, I want to add A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, who was a proto-socialist.
And that Christmas Carol.
That Christmas Carol that holds up to this day with its leaning. I think something like the number of shillings that Bob Cratchit makes is equal to something like $27,000 a year in America. So like a third of Americans are making less money than Bob Cratchit.
Jesus
so
Christ.
That's cool.
Wow. Yeah, especially back in the feudal times, just so people are aware of this, you were recommended to take 3 months of something like that, 3 months of vacation, 2 months of vacation.
I mean, if you maintained crops, you worked 6 months out of the year, right? Because those are the only year. Yeah.
Anyways, that aside, I also watch a lot of the late night comics as far as my news consumption, because I also am a comedy writer and want to make sure I'm not stealing people's jokes, but I generally find them it's really just Colbert and Seth Meyers. They make me laugh. They make me also attack them myself while I'm sitting there. But then you've got some more news, which I also can't recommend enough. They truly are. And I don't like promoting other podcasts necessarily fully, but at the same time, they've really got their fucking finger on the pulse of leftism.
Look, Cody, if you hear this, feel free to promote America the podcast and America the Conversation and all Shway Media. We would love for you to cross promote with us or do anything with us at all, because we're so big and important, and we love you.
You make us feel whole and sad because of the content that you put out. But as far as news, I mean, the most bland, but I'm trying to lean more into leftist things like Jacques Robin, and that's really the only leftist rag that I read. But I'd say NPR, like I said, Reuters, The Economist, as much as Andrew's gonna kill me for saying this one, the Washington Post, not religiously. I know CBS as well. I actually like CBS News, and it's more of a gut feeling on them at that point. Like I used to, it's more of a you have a trustworthy face, but that's something I myself have to get over, and you also, as a collective,
look, I canceled.
Have to get over.
I canceled my Washington Post subscription the moment I bought a bidet. So I just want to say, Thank you to Tushy. Free ad spot. You were cheaper than a year-long subscription to the Washington Post.
Oh God. But yeah, they're not good, and especially they're owned by Bezos. But at the same time, like my whole thing is at least you're not fucking saying climate change isn't real. And some of they do talk about things that actually happen. Like I don't go for them for like the hard hitting shit. Like I don't go for, to them for somebody who's actually going to critique the president in Congress. Like I go to much funnier people and much more left leaning people for that. But all in all, yeah, I stay center and more towards the left as far as my news consumption, just so I can factually get something and not sensationalize it, because I mean left-leaning stuff is going to sensationalize it just as much as the right, sometimes not as much. Calling you out, Young Turks, you're kind of sensationalist to me. But I do like the Young Turks. They're much better than Alex Jones and the rest of the fucking right loonies. So
yeah, I mean
they're
they're closer to the truth by far.
Yeah. They're closer.
I will agree that they are kind of sensationalist, but I mean, like you said, we're sensationalists sometimes. I mean,
sure, absolutely.
You can't help it.
We're not.
When you're talking about huge,
we're a discussion show.
That's true. We're definitely not a news show.
We are the same as Tucker Carlson.
We are.
Leave it there.
Well, clip it, audience. Tim said it.
We are Tucker Carlson. All right. Well, that's it.
It's like Spartacus. I am Tucker Carlson. I am Tucker Carlson. And we all start putting on bow ties and talking about replacement theory.
Oh, God. Well, yeah, definitely not going to do that. Replacement. I learned about that this year, and that is the...
Oh, yeah. You and I have talked about great replacement theory. I'm sure we'll do a whole podcast on that.
Oh, we will. And you can find that podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, I was almost say SoundCloud for some reason.
If we're on SoundCloud, dope. I got a rap album you all need to check out.
Oh, God. And all the other, wherever you get your podcasts, AmericaTheConversation.com,
LimeWire,
ShwayMedia.com, LimeWire, Kaza, Morpheus, Napster, wherever, Internet Archive, which I actually am going to be putting the show on the Internet Archive. And you can also find the extended episode of this if you've already listened to it. You'll hear about 5 to 10 minutes more on Patreon by donating $3 and maybe buying us lunch. I don't know, what's $3? Taco Bell? Who knows?
That's not a gordita. Inflation has made Taco Bell at least a $6 purchase.
Oh God. Oh wow. All right. Well, I'm not gonna eat that. Take care, everyone, and choose your news wisely.
Bye.
America the Conversation is a production of America the Podcast and Shway Media. The show is created, produced, and hosted by Andrew Turner and Tim Philippi. The show is mixed and edited by Tim Philippi at Shway Media Studios in Austin, Texas. Music for America the Conversation was created by Timmy Two Step. For more, please visit americatheconversation.com.
This has been a production of Shway Media, all rights reserved. For more information, please visit shwaymedia.com.